You just give me a second. All right. For this session, what we're going to do is we're going to cover three parts basically. The first one we're going to ask is about the universe's beginning and God, right? How the beginning of the universe makes a case for God. Then we're going to look at how the complexity of universe makes a case for God. Okay, like I said, we are only covering a few of these. We're not going in depth into it. We're not going to cover a lot of the intro part. That would mean that we can definitely revisit it at a later series later. But these are some of the essentials that you can keep with you. And then we're going to do an apologetics lab. So what it's quite simply going to do is we're going to break out into four breakout rooms, and you're going to get to do a hands-on application of what you've learned in the first two arguments, or the first two case making for God. Now you're all very familiar with each other, so you should be able to manage this quite well. And Abhishek, since I'm going to move through the slide, if you see anyone in the waiting room, do let them in. All right, the beginning of the universe and the case that we can make for God. So let's start off with this. Here's a table, right? The tables that we see around us, the chairs, the buildings, the materials, the material things of this world, we all know that these things have not existed always. There was a point in time when it did not exist, and then there was a point in time when it began to exist. Okay, so what does it take for a table like this to come into existence? Well, you need a carpenter first. And what do you need? You need wood as well for this table to come into existence. Now, Aristotle looked at this phenomena, and he said that the things that cause something to come into existence, all right, or the things or those entities that cause an effect to take place can be categorized as four. We're only going to look at the two that has been relevant over time, and that is an efficient cause. In other words, an agent would be the carpenter. The other cause would be the material cause. In other words, the thing out of which the table is made of, which is the effect that we have. So for every effect to take place, a building you make, an artwork you make, a food you make, it's all an effect of certain causes. Something caused the effect to come. What are the causes? Well, you need an efficient cause and you need a material cause. Now, in some cases, you may have just material cause. In some cases, you may just have an efficient cause. But the bottom line is, you need to have some sort of cause to bring the table into existence. Now, why did I go into this Aristotle efficient material distinction, this agent, and then the thing out of which the table comes out, is to just preempt you in case if you come across some objections to what we're going to cover later on. But this is quite an important point to keep in mind, right? You can have a maximum of two of these causes, or you may have one of these causes. But this is an important point for us to keep in mind. Now, moving ahead, what is the point that we can make? Well, the first point is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. Right? This is the first part of the argument that which we are going to build to show that God must be there behind the beginning of the universe. Okay, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Now, for us, it seems straightforward. I mean, for anyone, it seems pretty straightforward. But there are three reasons I'm going to give you as to why this statement is true. Okay, this is the first statement, P1. Okay, why this statement is true. Consider this random office, right? An American workplace, a random office. Now you are sitting at your desk, you get up, you go to the washroom, and you come back. And when you come back, you see that there's a dirty plate on your table. Now your immediate question would be, wait, where did this come from? Who put it here, right? That is a very common sense question to ask. Why? The dirty plate was not there before, and now it is there. So that is an effect you are dealing with. And then you're asking, what is the cause behind this effect? Did the janitor come and place it? Did my table mate try to place this on me as a prank? You're asking an explanation and cause behind this effect. What is the effect? The dirty plate on your desk. Now it has a material cause, right? Which is the dirty plate and the and the cutlery and all of that, then there is also an efficient cause. Who put it there? Because where did this come from and who put it there? Now, when you see this, our common sense response is always to say that, well, someone put this there, or this has an explanation. You won't look at it and go, oh, it just came out of nowhere. You never say that. So that is the first reason for everything that begins to exist as a cause. What is the reason? We know this intuitively to be true. If there is anything that begins to exist, then there must be a cause behind it. If there is a table that came into existence 5 minutes ago, then there must be a cause behind it. A carpenter, wood, there must be a cause behind it. So that is the first reason. We know this instantly, intuitively, that this is true. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. Now here's another reason to convince that it is true. This is the Sheikh Zayed Road. This is the artery of UAE. This runs through the downtown Dubai and connects to the capital and all of the places. And this is the road that I take to work. Now let's say I tell to you that, or someone comes and tells me, Jacob, I was driving down the Sheikh Zayed Road, and then while I was driving down it, the Taj Mahal just appeared in front of us. We was steaming down the road at 100, 120 kilometers an hour, and then boom, the Taj Mahal just came in front of us. Now we would say, well, no one would believe that. You won't believe it, I won't believe it, no one would believe it. Why would we not believe it? Well, it's everything that begins to exist has a cause. So if a Taj Mahal has to come into existence there, you need first the agents, the people who know to build the Taj Mahal, and then you need the marble out of which the Taj Mahal is built. Now, without any of these things present there, if I tell you that the Taj Mahal just popped into existence, you won't believe it. Which is why we don't have that doubt with seeing Taj Mahal in Agra, because we know the story, we know the marble, the white marble that they use, we know the masons that worked behind it to bring the Taj Mahal into existence. But for a Taj Mahal to pop into existence on the street there, it must happen without marble and masons working behind it. It must just literally come out of thin air. So this is a counter argument, right? If I say that things can come into existence without there being anything or anyone behind it, what that means is that now anything and everything can and must come into existence at any time, because you don't need to satisfy any condition for an effect to take place. For a Taj Mahal, practically what that means is that if things can come into existence without a cause, then a table must come into existence even if there are no carpenters in the world, even if there is no wood left in the world. A Taj Mahal must come into existence even if there are no masons and no marble left in the world. That particular Taj Mahal, made out of that white marble, expressing the artistic skill set of the Mughal era sculptures, must come into existence in the 21st century when everyone has forgotten the trade and no white marble exists. Why? Because the effect can come into existence without any particular cause behind it. So when we say that everything that begins to exist has a cause, and someone says, no, things can come into existence without a cause, like that is not necessary, then it just asks the question, then why don't things just come into existence? You don't need a cause. For Taj Mahal, you don't need masons, you don't need white marble. Cause is irrelevant to you. The effect can happen. So why doesn't it happen all around us? What we do see is that for a Taj Mahal to come into existence, it must have a cause behind it. It must have the mason, it must have the building material, the material cause. It must have those causes satisfied for the effect, the Taj Mahal, to be there. So that's the second reason that we say. Why do we say that everything that begins has a cause? Because if things can come into existence without a cause, then anything and everything can come into existence. Then finally, this understanding that everything that begins to exist has a cause is confirmed in our experience all the time. If you look at a murder scene, if you look at a particular person who has died and we're exploring, trying to understand what happened, we would say either it's a murder, so a homicide, someone came and took this person's life, or it's a suicide, the person took their own life, or what do we say? A natural cause, right? So the medicine that they took had some reaction in their body and it happened, or they had their cholesterol peaked, they had a stroke, they had a clot. I know there are doctors here in the call, so I'm not going to get into too much of the medical terms and embarrass myself. But there would be some sort of cause that happens in their body that brings about the effect, which is their death, right? So this is the rule of thumb that we use to make sense of the world around us. So the first statement of this argument is that everything that begins to exist has a cause. We agree, everyone agrees. Now, if someone disagrees with you, there are three reasons to point out. First thing is, we know this intuitively to be true. This is how we make sense of the world all around us. You open the door, if you see garbage in front of your door, you don't just postulate that it just popped out of existence out of thin air. Now, you know that there is an actual cause behind it and you would go about finding it. We know this intuitively to be true. Like in the case of the murder, we see this confirmed in our daily experience. This is over and over confirmed daily experience. This understanding is what drives the scientific enterprise. And thirdly, if things can come into existence without any cause, then anything and everything must come into existence. You don't need a cause. You don't need a particular cause to be satisfied for that effect to happen. A Taj Mahal, a tiger, a piano, Beethoven, like anything must happen anywhere and anytime. Okay. So this is the first part of the argument. Now, what's interesting is that even when you run into your atheist friends who disagree with this first part and say, no, things can come into existence without a cause, and they go around making their way around it. This is J.L. Mackie, a very renowned atheist philosopher. And he has dealt with this argument extensively. And he says that this principle has some reasonability to it, some plausibility to it. Like it still makes sense. Why? Because it is constantly confirmed in our experience, and we use this to make sense of our experience. So an atheist philosopher who has dealt extensively with this whole argument we're looking to, has said that this still makes sense. This first part has some sense to it. Why? Because this is how the world around us operates. So it's a very common sense point to say that everything that begins to exist has a cause. Right, let's look at the second part. The second part of this argument for God based off the beginning of the universe is that the universe began to exist. Again, this is also a very simple common sense statement that we use. Right? We all know this is how the world operates. This is taken for granted. The Big Bang Theory, everything's out there. But still there would be some who disagree. So how would you show the case that the universe began to exist to someone who says, no, the universe has always been here? So here's a simple, you can go into extensive depth to it, but I'm going to give you a very simplified philosophical reasoning, and then I'm going to show you straightforward the scientific argument that can also be used here. So consider a number line, okay? And this number line obviously ends at 0, and as you go farther, higher digits, you get 100, a million, a billion, and so on and so forth, right? The number line extends unendingly. If I come up to you and I ask you, can you count down from 100 to 0? You would say yes. It's quite easy. You start at 100 and you go down 99, 98, 1, 0. If I ask you, can you count down from 1 million to 0? You would give me the same answer. If I ask you to count down from 1 billion to 0, it will take you some effort, but you will get there because you will start at 1 billion, then 999 million, and then so on and so forth, you would get to 0. But if I ask you to count down from the largest natural number or the largest whole number all the way down to 0, what would your response be? Would you say that because I can count down from 100, or because I can count down from 10,000, or because I can count down from 1 trillion, I can therefore count down from the largest natural or the largest whole number? Now we know what's the issue there, right? The issue is that as you keep going past every large number, as you keep going past one number to the next biggest number, there is still a next biggest number right behind it. And then you keep going onto it and onto it and onto it. You are chasing a number line that doesn't run out. So your issue is you never get to start, let alone to count down. You have to start somewhere to count down to 0, but you're unable to start anywhere to count down to 0. Now, how does this apply to what we are talking about? Instead of 0, it's the present moment, the present day that we're talking about. Now you have 100 years in the past, a million years in the past, and a billion years in the past. If this past timeline just like the number line keeps going on and on unendingly, would it be possible to count down from the past and reach the present? No, you can't, right? I mean, it took us 100 years from 100 years before to reach here. It took us a million years from a million years before to reach here. But if the past is unendingly stretched all the way back, if the past just extends all the way back, how does time count down from that moment or the earliest moment to come here? It's just like you're chasing the number line. You never get to start somewhere to reach zero or the present. Now, if someone tells you, hey, I have counted down from the largest number all the way down to zero, what it would mean is that for that to actually happen, we know it's impossible for that to happen. But if someone were able, if you walk into a room and someone truly, faithfully, sincerely, without lying, without deceit, counts down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, what that means is that whatever number that they started counting from was the fixed final point. Like that was the actual starting point. And when we look at the world around us, we see time counting down to this present. We see a past that's happening and time unfolds to the present, which means that just like that person counting down and reaching zero, time too must have had a definite starting point in the past. In other words, the universe could not have always been here. Time could not have always been here. The universe must have had a specific starting point in the past, meaning the universe began to exist. If the universe has always been here, then the timeline would stretch all the way back without a starting point. It would just keep going on and on and on. That is not the case. So that is the second argument, that the universe began to exist. Now, what is the scientific argument? Well, quite simply, the expansion of the universe. In the early 20th century, when this was being put forward, when the Big Bang Theory was coming to the foray, when Big Bang Theory was coming to the whole discussion among scientists, the existing idea was the universe is a static universe. There is no expansion, there is no contraction. The universe has always been there. So they look around and they see the planets moving and the stars moving and all of that moving. It's like the table and the chair moving around within a room. The room doesn't change. It's just stuff within inside just keeps moving around. And then we have Edwin Hubble and all the others with their observations of the galaxies and all of that, who came to realization and said that, hey, it's not just that the table and the chair are moving away from each other. It's that the room itself is expanding and growing on and on. And so this expansion of the universe is what drove Big Bang Theory to the front line. And which is why the Big Bang Theory, the Big Bang model of the universe, the standard cosmic model of the universe, has been affirmed and confirmed over and over with experimentation, study, and all of that. So the Big Bang model of the universe itself, the common consensus among scientists itself is that the universe had a beginning. So where does that lead us? First point, everything that begins to exist has a cause, right? We saw three reasons for it. First one, we know this intuitively to be true. Like everything that begins to exist has a cause. We know this instantaneously. Second, if this is not the case, then anything must begin to exist without any cause behind it, right? Third, we see this confirmed in our daily life, in all that we do. In fact, atheist philosopher David Hume, who is most famous even now for having written against miracles and all of that. He was a Scottish philosopher. Even he, in one of his letters, he remarks saying that, see, even I don't disagree with this, because to disagree with this is to make an absurd claim. So atheist philosophers also understand that this first statement makes sense, because why this is the way we make sense of the world. It's a very common sense way of looking at the world. So everything that begins to exist has a cause. Clear. What is the second? The universe began to exist. So what does P1 and P2 lead us to? The conclusion is that, therefore, the universe has a cause. So you have the first statement that is true, the second statement that is true, which means the conclusion is that the universe has a cause. Now, if someone wants to disagree with you on the last part, if someone wants to say to you, no, the universe does not have a cause, what they must do is They must either show that P1 or P2 is wrong, or they must show that the connection between both of these statements doesn't exist. Unless they do that, if both these statements are true, and yes, the connection is very clear, the conclusion holds, which is the universe has a cause. Now consider that we are not telling them that this cause is God right now. All we are saying right now is that the universe has a cause. That's all that we are saying right now. It could be God, it could be whatever you want to draw it up to be. In your conversation, what I would also point out is the universe has a cause. Do you concede that? If they concede it, if they accept it, then we ask the question, okay, what is this cause then? What is the nature of this cause? And so that is the next part of this case that we make for God. What is the nature of the cause? Now, this is the way that we go about understanding the cause. We are not trying to force fit God into it. We are just simply exploring the nature of this cause based on the effect. What is the effect? The universe, right? So, for example, if someone in history or archaeology tells you, they show you this gold bar, and they say to you, hey, this was the first gold that was ever produced in human history. You know for a fact that the hammer or whatever tool that was used to make that gold bar was not made out of gold. Why? Because if the hammer was made out of gold, then that hammer is the first thing that was made out of gold. Because we know that that gold bar is the first gold ever produced, we know that whatever was the cause behind producing that gold could not have been made of gold. We have never seen that hammer, we were never there to observe it, but by understanding the effect, we can understand what the cause behind it was. This is a key point to keep in mind, because that's what we are exactly going to do. So what is the nature of the cause? Well, the first fact is that because space, time, and matter came into existence with the existence of the universe, the cause of the universe must be spaceless and timeless. It's as simple as that. Because space, time, and matter all came into existence with the universe. So whatever was creating the universe must be spaceless and timeless. Again, we're not saying right away that this is God to the person that we're talking to. We're simply following where the reasoning leads. So it must be spaceless and timeless. It must also be changeless. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, if this, for ease of saying, only just going to say the creator of the universe. If this creator of the universe undergoes change, then this creator is on a timeline. We can say before this change happened and after this change happened. In which case it is no longer timeless. That creator or the cause of the universe is on a timeline. But because the cause is spaceless and timeless, it therefore must be without change. Right? So that's the reason that we have to say that it is changeless. It must also be immaterial, because like I said, matter came into existence with the universe. So whatever created the universe must be immaterial. It must be beginningless and uncaused. Two reasons. One is because it is changeless, it must always be the way it is. If there is a cause that creates it, if it has a beginning, then again, there is a timeline factor involved. So because it is timeless, it must be changeless, and because it is changeless, it must be without beginning and uncaused. Now, if someone says, oh no, the universe, the creator of the universe has a cause behind it, the creator of the universe was caused by something else, that is not the point for us to defend. We just had to ask them, okay, what caused that creator and what caused that creator, and they have to deal with a line goes all the way back. And if that line goes all the way back, then we never get to the present, because we just have to wait for an unending line of creators to create the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, to reach the creator of the universe to then create the universe. So it's just a lengthy line. We are not saying that the line exists. We say that the cause of the universe is there, beginningless, uncaused, always been there. If someone says, no, that thing must have a creator behind it, it's up to them to deal with the whole absurdity issue that's there. So which is why we're not going to delve into it. And then the cause of the universe must be immensely powerful, because we are talking about the forces of nature coming into existence. Gravitational force and strong and weak nuclear force and electromagnetic force. These are immense forces of nature. Whatever created this must be immensely powerful. And finally, it must be a personal mind. Now, this is the part where we move from merely saying that the cause of the universe is a thing or an energy to saying the cause of the universe is God. So stay with me on as I explore and show you how we make this connection and how you can use this in your conversation. Consider someone throwing a brick at a window. Okay, they throw the brick hits the window, and what happens? The window breaks. Right? That's very clear for us. Now let's assume there is a big pool of water. The water is there. You place an ice on it. What happens? The ice floats. Now what are we looking at here? The brick hitting the window is an event. It happens at a particular point in time. It hits, and then the cause, the effect, which is the window breaking, is also an event. So they are limited to certain specific points in time. But what we see below is a state. Water has its density, water has its attribute, its characteristics in that state always. And for as long as water has those properties, ice will always float on the water. Okay, so you can look at a glass, you can look at a body of water and ice floating it, and that cause and effect will always remain in that format. There is water always underneath it and ice always floating on it, because the cause and the effect are both state. But the brick hitting the window and the glass breaking are events. The brick hits, tuck, point in time, glass breaks, tuck, point in time. What we see with the universe is that the cause of the universe is like a state. It has always been there. It is without any change. It is without time. It is in a state form. But the effect is a universe that began to exist. In other words, if the cause of the universe is a state, then the effect must always have been there. Water floats on ice. What is the cause? The propensity, the density of water molecules. What is the effect? Ice floating. So water always has that propensity. So ice on top of it will always float. What we see with the universe case is that the creator of the universe has always been there, is without change, has all the properties, has everything that is required to create the universe, has always been there, but the universe has not always been there. So you're looking at state versus an event. Now, how do we make sense of this? If the cause of the universe is some sort of impersonal thing, like an energy, and it has been always without change, it has always existed in the form it always has been, if it has always had whatever is needed to create the universe, why hasn't the universe always been there? Because all the conditions are always satisfied. Why didn't the universe exist eternally? The only way to make sense of this is if the cause of the universe is a personal mind. Because a personal mind can have all the properties needed to create the universe, can exist eternally, but then choose to create the universe at a particular point. And this is how we come to the conclusion that the cause of the universe, that is spaceless, timeless, changeless, beginningless, uncaused, immaterial, immensely powerful, must be a personal mind. It can't be an energy, it can't be a force like some believe or want it to be. It must be a personal mind. And so when we look at all of this put together, we ask, what is the best fit for all of these characteristics? It's quite simply God. Now, if someone contests it and says, no, it is not God, it is something else, invite them to make the case. But the moment you say list all of this, even they themselves would immediately think, oh, this guy is trying to make a case for God. Because they also know that all of this fits what we call God. So that's the first argument that we were looking at. Okay, the universe beginning and how it points to God. Now let's look at the case on the universe's complexity and how it relates to God. Let me walk you through an example at first. To my research, to the best I could find, one of the largest lottery in the world is known as the Powerball lottery. This has around 300 million tickets on average taken out. Now, for the sake of mathematical calculation, let's say that there are 100 million tickets or 100 million people who participate in that lottery. And your friend is one person who goes and participates in the lottery. So they take a ticket, and there are another 100 million people basically who are out there who also take the ticket. What is the probability that your friend will win the lottery? It is 1 out of 100 million. So that's it in decimal, and then the mathematical way that we would formulate it, 1 in 10 to the power 8. Okay. Now your friend goes, takes the lottery, there are 100 million ticket, your friend has one ticket, and he wins the lottery. Now that is really unbelievable, right? Out of 100 million people, your friend won. Now obviously one ticket had to be selected, so it just happened to be your friend. So this guy was really lucky, and you move on with your life. And then your friend goes and takes the ticket the second time. The next lottery happens. He takes it, surprise, surprise, he wins the lottery. So he wins the lottery back to back. So now you start to wonder, wow, this guy is really lucky, because the probability that he will win this lottery back to back consecutively is 1 in 10 to the power 16. It's really small. Like it's we would be forgiven for saying it's impossible because it's really small. But then, maybe he's, I don't know, extra lucky. And then your friend goes and takes it the third time, fourth time, and the fifth time. And he wins all of the 5 times back to back to back. Now, what is the probability that that will happen? The probability is 1 in 10 to the power 40. Okay, now this is really difficult to believe, right? I mean, how is it that this guy is winning the lottery 5 consecutive times out of 100 million people? So what are the explanations that you would have before you? It could be chance, right? It could be that he's just unbelievably lucky. He was lucky the first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, even the fifth time. Or maybe the lottery is rigged. Maybe he knows someone on the inside. Maybe it is not chance. Maybe chance is too difficult to believe. So just have this example in the back of your mind, and hopefully it's something that you can use in your conversation later as well. So keep both of this interaction that we have with this example in the back of your mind. Now let's get into the case that I'm going to talk about. Okay, here's the equation on your screen, right? I know there are a lot of science folks in the crowd. Does anyone want to unmute and tell us what each of these letters mean and what this equation means? Anyone can step up. We have a lot of science folks. Anyone? All right, I'm not going to put anyone on the spot. So this is Newton's law of gravity, right? And the reason I'm drawing this up is to make clear one critical point. The letter G stands for the gravitational constant. And what I mean by that is that's the value of gravity, and it is a constant. It doesn't change. It's a fixed figure. Now, when we talk about force, F, what the F figure will be, it will depend on what the mass of the first object, mass of the second object, which is m1, m2, and all of that. But the G is always going to be fixed. It is going to be a constant figure. Okay. Now, here's the key part. When we are talking about the whole argument that we're going to follow right now, we're talking about things like the gravitational constant, things that are fixed in the mathematics of the universe. What we see is that the universe exists in a very delicate form. In other words, these gravitational constant, these fixed figures that operate within the universe have been fixed so delicately that if any one of these numbers change, the universe ceases to be one that accommodates life. Life will no longer exist. In other words, the properties, the figures of the universe has been finely tuned to enable life to exist. And this is known as the fine-tuning argument. Okay, that's the easy way to remember. These values have been finely tuned to enable life to exist. So we are not talking about the laws of nature. We are not talking about these mathematical representations of the law. This is Newton's law of gravity. We're not talking about these equations. We're talking about these constant figures within the universe that do not change. If they change, life does not exist. And what do I mean by life? We're not talking about humans or mammals or anything. We're talking about extremely basic form, the ability for something to take in food, to absorb energy, to reproduce, to adapt, all of that. No form of life in any of that simplest form can exist if these values change. That's the whole argument. Now we're going to look at what that looks like in real life. So this is sort of like dealing with Jenga, right? If any one of these pieces moves, the whole thing comes down. Now imagine you're creating a Jenga with 1,000,000 pieces or 1,000,000,000 pieces, such that if you move one piece, the whole thing comes down. That's how delicately balanced the Jenga is, right? That is what we are basically talking about. We're not talking about a Jenga made out of 2 pieces and 1 piece removes, or a Jenga made out of 10 pieces and if one goes, it comes down. We're not talking about a Jenga building that's made of 1,000,000, billion, trillion pieces. And even if you remove one piece, the whole thing comes down. It is so delicate. It is so finely tuned, that Jenga structure. And I'm going to show you some examples of what that looks like here in the universe case. So the gravitational constant, if it changes by this small amount, like I don't even know how to call this decimal place. If the value of the power of gravity changes by this much, life will not exist in the universe. And this figure is given by scientist Paul Davies. All the 3 figures I'm going to show you are not given by Christians, are not given by Christian apologists. These are given by hardcore, widely accepted scientists. And Stephen Hawking then tells us that the expansion of the universe, we talked about the Big Bang, how the universe is expanding, all of that, right? The expansion of the universe 1 second after the Big Bang, if it changed, the rate of expansion, if it changed by this decimal figure, the universe would not exist. In other words, life again, obviously, would not be possible. And then one more figure. This is given by Sir Roger Penrose, Nobel laureate. He pointed out that the initial condition of the universe, again, I'm not going to get into the technicalities of it, so I'm just going to leave it at that. The initial condition of the universe, the initial value of energy in the universe, if it changed by this smaller figure, that is 10 to the power 1230, I don't even have space to put that many zeros in here. If that value changed by this small decimal place, universe would not exist and life would not exist. Now again, we are talking about values that are fixed in the universe. The power of gravity, the rate of expansion of the universe after the Big Bang, the special entropy condition of the universe at the beginning, and we have so many more. The ratio between strong and weak nuclear force, the ratio between gravity and electromagnetic force, all of these fixed figures, that any of these figures, if they change by as small a decimal as we see on screen, life does not exist at all. So we're looking at a very complex Jenga structure. So it's clear. So we talked about the argument is the fine-tuning argument. If these constant figures change by a slight amount, life does not exist or the universe doesn't exist. And what are we talking about life? In its most basic form, we're not talking about advanced civilizations. We're talking about the most basic form cannot exist. Because if you don't have galaxies, if you don't have heavy elements, if you don't have hydrogen and nitrogen and carbon, you can't get around creating or having life in any form. If no planets form, if no stars form, if no galaxies form, how will you have life of any form? And then we look at these values that tell us that this is a very delicate structure. Now that's clear, okay? It's very delicate. These numbers are very difficult for us to make sense of. Now, what is the explanation that we can look at? These are all accepted by scientists around the world. This is like common factor. This is not something that even you have to make a case for. I will share the session outline with you so you can have what these numbers mean and all of that with you. So now we go about making sense of these numbers. Okay, where does that lead us? Well, that's where the argument comes into picture. This fine tuning of the universe, right, that enables life to happen, has 3 explanations. One, it's physical necessity, or it's chance, or it's design. What do I mean by physical necessity? Someone can come up and say, well, this universe is very complex. It's structured in this particular way so that life can exist. Maybe this is the way that the universe must exist. This is the only way that the universe can exist. And this is the only way that the universe exists. So problem solved. There's nothing for us to explain. Is that the case? Is this the only way that the universe can exist? Well, let's ask Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking is one of his lectures, and this is what it looked like, right? It's like a domino fall. The starting events of the universe all the way must be so that life exists. There's nothing that can happen anywhere, and this is the only universe. Stephen Hawking, in one of his talk, he pointed out that string theory, which is very widely touted among quantum theorists and theoretical physicists, he points out that that theory predicts that we can have a large number of possible universes. It's actually 10 to the power 500. That is 1 followed by 500 zeros. 1 followed by 2 zeros is 100. 1 followed by 3 zeros is 1000. Imagine a number that is 1 followed by 500 zeros. That is bigger than a trillion, bigger than a billion, bigger than a zillion, way bigger of a number. What Stephen Hawking is saying is that there are that many possible universes. In other words, there are that many ways the universe could have been. So this is not the only universe that must exist. So you can't say that that is the answer, right? This universe could not have been. There could have been any other way the universe could have been. Yet, this is the way that the universe is. So then we have two more explanations remaining before us. What if it's chance? Could that be the case? Now, at this point, someone may point out and say, hey, we have the sample size of only one universe. We have just this universe. How can you know what other universes would have been? How can you take a probability or a mathematical calculation here if you have a sample size of just this one universe? We are not able to observe the other universes. We don't even know if there are other universes. And even if there are, we are not able to observe them and then do mathematics. So here is what this actually looks like. Imagine you take a whiteboard and you put a red dot for this universe. Life exists in this universe. So a red dot means a universe where life exists. Now we take the gravitational constant, the power of gravity, and we change the value ever so slightly, like Paul Davies showed us, right? What do we get? We get a universe where life does not exist. Okay, that's a blue dot. Now we take the ratio of one of the forces of nature, and we change the value ever so slightly. What happens? Well, we realize that life cannot exist in that universe. So we put another blue dot. And we go about taking these different values, changing it here and there to see what we land with. What we land with is a sea of blue with a red in the middle. In other words, as we change these constant figures, we find universes within which life cannot exist. And the only one that we're left with is our universe. This is how we get the probability factor in place, even though we only have a sample of this one universe. Now, someone can step up and say, what about the multiverse? Right? The multiverse hypothesis is that there are millions of universes out there, and ours just happen to be one universe within which, all of these conditions were satisfied. The issue with the multiverse, and you'll have to stick along very carefully as I expound this. The issue with this explanation is that it explains far too many. What do I mean by that? We're talking about a universe that has so many of these conditions satisfied. And we're asking, why are all of these conditions satisfied? The answer is that, well, there are so many universes out there such that all possible options have been exhausted. And finally, there is this universe that has all of these conditions satisfied. The issue with that is that now anything and everything can be explained. If two people's exam sheets look the same, the teacher looks at it and the teacher goes, okay, both of your exam sheets look exactly the same. You can actually say that because there are a million, zillion, infinite number of universes out there, we just happen to be in the one where both of our answer sheets, even though we do not copy, happen to be exactly the same. Now, why is that a sensible answer to give within the multiverse explanation is that the whole multiverse explanation is that you have an infinite number of universes so that all the options are exhausted. And this improbable universe just happens to be. Because you can just keep on adding universe after universe to make sense of this current one. So all scientific discovery, every written piece, every artwork, everything within this universe can be explained by saying that, oh, there are just millions of universes out there, and ours just happened to be the one where this thing happened. Ours just happened to be the one where both of our answers look the same. You can't disprove it in that sense. And so that immediately strikes us to be counterintuitive. That sounds us to be extremely unreasonable and just an easy way to just get out of the solution, to get out of the problem. Not only that, we don't have scientific proof or evidence for the multiverse. That's completely an issue of its own on other side. But even if someone were to say, no, I still think that the multiverse hypothesis explains the complexity of this universe or the improbability that this universe exists, the question then shifts to asking what we asked at first. When we look at someone who is taking part in a lottery and winning a lottery 5 times back to back, what do we say at that time? Do we look at these numbers and we say that it is surprisingly random chance that he won it 5 times back to back? Or we look at it and say that the improbability is so high that you can't just peg it to chance, that there must be some sort of intelligence happening behind the scene. It is not an accident, it is orchestrated. The lottery guy and this guy has rigged the system, or some sort of deliberate, purpose-driven action is happening behind the scene. If that is the simple reading and the most common sense reading that we would come out of this lottery example, why can't the same be extended to the universe as well? What is holding someone back from saying that even with extremely highly improbable figures, 1 in 10 to the power 100, 1 in 10 to the power 1230, even with all these big values, why are we still saying that it is sheer luck that we are in this universe? Why are you still saying it is pure chance? Why are you still hypothesizing or bringing up multiverse universes that don't have scientific backing to just say that this is chance? Well, it's simply because they want to run away from the other consequence. What is that? If it's not physical necessity, if it's not chance, then it must be design. There is no other explanation. It's one of these three. Either this universe is the only way it has to be. We saw that that is not the case. Any other universe could have been. Or it is just sheer luck, which makes it very difficult for us to make sense of the world around us. And we don't make sense of the world in that way. Then the only other explanation is that it is design. We use that explanation for this real world scenario of a lottery. We have to use that explanation for the real world scenario of the universe as well. And so we say that it is not physical necessity, it is not chance, so therefore it is design. And this is the fine-tuning argument for the case for God. So the first one was what we call as the Kalam cosmological argument. The cosmos points towards a creator, a cause, God, and the fine-tuning of the universe, the complexity of the universe points towards a creator. So these are the 3 points that we covered. First, the universe beginning point towards God, and the universe's complexity points towards God. Now we will do a bit of a hands-on application of this. So I'm going to show you 4 different scenarios, and we're going to break off into, I don't know how many of us are here right now, but we're going to break off into 4 different groups. And as a group, you just need to make sense of how you would answer each of these questions. Okay? And this is the point you can take a screenshot or maybe take a picture of the questions on screen. So the first one is scenario 1, right? The Kalam cosmological argument says that everything that exists must have a cause. You claim God exists, so then God must have a cause. How can you say that your God is uncreated or uncaused? Just all of you can take a picture because you won't know which group you would land in. Just take a picture of this, have a screenshot, and then we'll move into the group and try to do a bit of brainstorming within the next 10 minutes. Right, scenario number 2. You say that the causal principle, the cause effect that we talked about, used in the Kalam is validated by everyday experiences. But these everyday experiences happen within the universe. So how can you say that this applies to the universe as a whole? That's a very interesting question to ask. So this would be what one group will try to look to and find an answer to. Like again, you can take a picture, take a screenshot. Right, moving on, scenario 3. You say God is not physical or made up of matter, but you also say that this God is the designer of the complex universe. Here's the question: how did your God create this universe then? As long as you are unable to clearly explain the mechanism of God's creation, why should anyone believe that God created this universe? So, how do we find an answer to this? How do we respond to this? This is what group 3 will focus on. And finally, the last scenario. Imagine a puddle of water woke up one day and realized that it is placed perfectly well within the pothole. The puddle says, "Wow, this pothole is finely tuned for me. There must be a designer for sure." That's how nonsensical the design argument is. You have evolved within this universe. So it is no wonder that the universe appears fine tuned for your existence. Right? I think I'll also draw the cat, so in that way we'll all be able to keep track of it. Now we'll move into the breakout rooms.